What have their strengths and weaknesses been? Have their games been going over or under? To give you all the information you need to successfully bet round 18 of the NRL. But before we get into those games, let's quickly review round number 17. We had a full slate of 8 games last week. Just the one team had the bye, which was the Roosters. The round started with the Panthers being the only underdog of the weekend to win a game outright. They beat the Bulldogs 8 points to 6. They trailed at halftime, then came back to win with the Nathan Cleary charge down and converted a 2-point margin in the end. Then on Friday, the Seagulls beat the Tigers 28-10 and the Raiders beat the Knights 22-18. Saturday, the Broncos beat the Warriors 26-12. Dragons beat the Eels 34-20, and then the Dolphins beat the Rabbitohs 50-28. And then on Sunday, the Storm beat the Sharks at home 30-6, and the Cowboys beat the Titans 30 points to 24 on the Gold Coast. When you go through and look at these games, you'll notice home teams won 6 of the 8 games, and home teams covered the spread in 7 of the 8 games. That means now home teams are 75-53 against the spread overall on the season, going extremely well. North Queensland against the Cowboys were the only away team to cover the spread. They did that as the favourite in that game. It ended up only being a small favourite. And as I said, Panthers against the Bulldogs were the only underdog to win the game outright. Every other winner was the favourite. Whilst the favourites won 7 of the 8 games, only 6 of the favourites covered. So there was one other team, and that was Newcastle against Canberra. They covered the spread as the underdog alongside Penrith. Then 5 games went under the total and 3 games went over the total. Right now on the season, 69 games have gone under, 59 games have gone over. And also back to the favourites thing, in terms of covering the spread, underdogs are 71-57 against the spread on the season. So still right now, home teams, underdogs, and unders are the 3 dramatically sides that are comprehensively winning the counts in terms of spread and handicap betting. On to this weekend, the first game on Friday night, the Bulldogs versus the Broncos. Right now, the Bulldogs are favourites. They are minus 5.5, $1.48, and the total is 45.5. Remember, this weekend, teams are all going to be affected by Origin players out, so you need to factor that in with your analysis on these teams. Broncos were the first team to beat the Bulldogs this season. That was all the way back in round number 8 at Suncorp Stadium. Broncos winning that game 42-18 as $2.45 underdogs at home. Prior to that, Bulldogs had won 6 in a row. We're coming off a 32-0 win against the Rabbitohs. Now, when I went back and looked at that game, first thing, it was played in the pouring rain, and we know this season Bulldogs haven't been the best team in wet conditions, but Broncos scored 6 tries to 0 in the first half to lead 34-0. At halftime, Bulldogs had 2 sin bins during that first half, and Broncos scored 2 of those 6 tries during that period. Both teams had 1 sin bin in the second half. Bulldogs scored 1 try whilst they were down to 12 men, and they scored 3 tries to 1 in the second half. Broncos winning by a 24-point margin. There were 4 total sin bins in that game, and this was the first game of that round, which was round 8, where I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but the round where every game had at least 1, but multiple, if not more than 2 or 3 sin bins. For the Brisbane win, they had 56% possession. They completed at 83%, and the Bulldogs completed at 75%. Both good completion rates considering the conditions. Broncos had 1,537 run meters. Bulldogs only 1,204 and just 375 post-contact. Brisbane really won that forwards battle in the middle of the field and only missed 10 tackles for the game, whereas the Bulldogs missed 34. Broncos had 4-3 line breaks. Errors, penalties were both even. Bulldogs won the set restart count 3-0. Now, leading into this game, the Bulldogs lost against the Panthers 8-6 last week. That was just their 3rd loss of the season, so still hold a 11-3 record, but have failed to cover the spread in 4 of their last 5 games. The Broncos have won and covered their last 3. They were against the Warriors last week, prior to that against the Sharks, and prior to their bye against the Gold Coast Titans. All 3 of those games have been at home for them. Last time they had to go out on the road was round 13 against the Seagulls, and they lost that game 34 points to 6 and started favourite there as well. So it's been a while since Brisbane have had to travel. They'll have to do it this week without quite a few players. They lose Reece Walsh, Payne Haas, Patrick Carrigan, and Jahamet Shibas from their lineups. That definitely takes a lot of their attacking power out, not only in the middle with Haas, but with Shibasaki and Walsh have been having a lot of success down that left side of the field lately. And losing Haas in defense is a big loss. Bulldogs, they lose Crichton, Max King, Kurt Mann, and Jacob Carraz is out as well. And the other big loss is Daniel Sluka Fafita, who got concussion last week. Bulldogs do lose both front rowers for this game, so that hurts them a little bit. But I think this game's going to come down to defense, and the better defensive side is clearly the Bulldogs. They right now lead the league in points conceded and also are ranked second in meters conceded per point. Both really good numbers. Neither side really give up a lot of run meters, but Bulldogs are slightly better. And then attacking numbers, there's not really a great deal between them. But I think Bulldogs defensively can be strong enough. They still have Matt Burton in the side as well too. The Bulldogs defense should be able to limit this Broncos side, particularly with them traveling in this game. One of the things that I break down in the NRL Bet Finders is the team's stats based on the different situations that they are in. And Broncos at home this year are averaging just under 29 points a game, whereas on the road, they're averaging just 22 points per game, so almost 7 points lower on average, and also they're conceding significantly, and they're also conceding slightly more in away games as it currently stands. Bulldogs also have an extra 2 days rest for this game, and Broncos are the ones having to travel, as the Bulldogs played on the Thursday night and the Broncos played on Saturday. So I think there's a lot of things in the Bulldogs' favour here. I think they're deserving of being favourites, and I think they'll win this game and somewhat buck the history against the Broncos. Broncos have won and covered 6 of the past 7 versus the Bulldogs, including the last 2 away games against them. The match winner has covered in 20 of the past 21 head-to-head, so meaning that whoever wins the game also covers the spread, and the underdog has won the past 2. 5 of the past 6 have been decided by at least 20 points. This matchup has a history of being a blowout, so just be cautious if you're looking at a close game. Whereas on paper, like, you would think this should be a close game based on these teams' current form. I think the Bulldogs will get over the line and win. The past 4 head-to-head have gone over, with the total at 45.5 as the current number. I do think that number is slightly high, just due to how these teams play. Overall season stats put this number bang on, but with those outs, I think it just takes a little bit too much attacking play away from the Broncos that I think we'll see an under. Bulldogs will definitely be ready for them after what happened earlier on in the season. I think that game somewhat caught them by surprise. Broncos were coming off back-to-back losses leading into that game as well. And yeah, I think this time around it'll be a bit of a different story. Then we have the Raiders versus Dragons. The Raiders, $1.30 favourites, minus 10.5, and the total is 47.5. They haven't played this season. They last met round 27 last year, and the Raiders won 26-24. The Dragons scored 3 tries inside the first 11 minutes of the game and jumped out to an 18-0 lead. They got their 4th and final try shortly after in the 19th minute. So all 4 of their tries for the Dragons coming during that first 19 minutes of the game. They didn't score after that point. Raiders themselves scored 2 tries in the first half, but trailed 24-10 at halftime. Then, after the break, the Raiders scored 3 unanswered tries, including Corey Horsburgh's scoring the match win in the 77th minute, which was converted, and the Raiders won the game by 2 points. Dragons completed at 83%, and the Raiders only completed at 70%. Meters gained were pretty even, but the Dragons did have 30 additional runs. Raiders led the line breaks 4-3. Missed tackles were even. Raiders made 14-11 errors. So this was a game that Dragons at home probably should have won. Like, when you have an 18-0 lead and you complete well and you don't make more errors than the opponent or make an extreme number of missed tackles, you really should win the game. However, the Raiders were good enough to fight back there on the road and win. Canberra now this season have won 11 of their past 12 games, with the only loss being against the Bulldogs. They've won their last 2, both by 4 points against the Knights and Tigers. They haven't covered the spread, though, in either of those games. During their run prior to the bye, they covered in 9 of 10. Both their last 2 games since the bye as well have gone under the total. They have the Dragons this week and then another bye. So they're really well positioned right now on the top of the ladder going forward. The Dragons, they broke a 2-game losing streak last weekend, beating the Parramatta Eels 34-20. They've covered the spread in 5 of their last 6 games. And their last 3 have gone over the total. And if you go back a bit further, 6 of their last 8 have gone over the total. Looking at how these teams match up in this game, the form side is definitely Canberra. They're at home here, and the odds suggest they'll win this game and win it comfortably, which I definitely think they're going to do. They're not badly hit by Origin. They lose Josh Papali and also without Hudson Young, who didn't play in the game last week either. And then for the Dragons, their main out through Origin is Valentine Holmes. It looks like they have made quite a host of changes to their lineup this week and had to do a lot of play around late, close to kickoff in the game against the Dragons, then picked up injuries through the game. Just don't think they have a strong enough team to be able to go to Canberra and win this game. Raiders have won the last 4 against the Dragons, but the Dragons have covered the spread in 6 of the last 7 against Canberra. Historically, this has been a close game. The past 7 have been decided by 10 or less points, including 4 by a 2-point margin. I mentioned that because the handicap is 10.5. For me personally, I rarely ever will lay double-digit handicaps. I always look for other ways to play it. You'll so often see, like in the NRL and also in other sports, like particularly American football as well, once teams don't continue once they've got a strong enough lead, it's not about how much they win by, it's just the fact that they win the game, and often the team trailing will come back and score a couple of tries. They'll get a few calls go their way, that'll give them some momentum and it'll close the margin a little bit. Try to refrain from doing that other than in really good situations. So I'll be looking at other ways to play it, but I think Canberra will win the game and at home should win it comfortably. The total is 47.5. I make a fair total for this game, 47.5 as well. So I think the number is spot on. 9 of the past 13 head-to-head have gone under the total. Right now, how these teams are currently trending, the Dragons are trending towards the overs based off their recent form, and the Raiders are somewhat trending towards the unders. More so due to the fact they've been limiting their opposition scoring. They've only conceded over 12 points in 2 of their last 5 games. They've kept 3 teams to 12 or less, which makes it very difficult for you to lose games in that situation when teams aren't scoring against you. But I really like the Raiders to be winning this game. Then we have the Cowboys versus the Melbourne Storm. The Storm are $1.28 favourites, minus 10.5 up in Townsville, and the total is 48.5. Cowboys have won 3 of the past 4 against Melbourne. Melbourne winning the game earlier this season in round 14. That was at Amy Park. The Storm scored early there through Eli Katoa, and they ended the half scoring 3 tries to 1. Jerome Hughes got a double in that first half. He got his second right on halftime. Melbourne led 18-4 at the halftime break. Then they scored the first try in the second half. Cowboys made a bit of a fight back. They scored 2 quick tries in the 52nd and 54th minute. But then the Storm ran in 2 more tries, which pushed the margin out to 24 points with a 38-14 final score. Melbourne had 54% possession. They completed at 81%, whereas the Cowboys, they only completed at 61%. Storm had 668 post-contact meters, really good numbers. Line breaks were even at 6-6, but the Cowboys missed 42 tackles and made 16 errors. They also conceded 4 set restarts to 1. For me personally, I find it really difficult to see the Cowboys winning this game. They are without Tom Dearden, Ruben Cotter, Reece Robson, and Jeremiah Nanai through Origin. Storm obviously lose quite a number of players as well. Munster, Grant, Arrow, and Xavier. However, I think they're well and truly capable of covering the losses. They've consistently been needing to do it, and even having to travel up to Townsville where they've lost their past 3 games up there. I think they're going to be too good. When I said the Storm have lost 3 of the past 4 versus Cowboys, they did win 12 straight prior to that. So if you go real long term, then the Storm still have a really good record. It's just those recent games, obviously won it towards the end of last year in round 26, where the Cowboys won 38-30. Melbourne rested majority of their team for that game. Coming into this one, North Queensland, they broke a 3-game losing streak when they beat the Titans on Sunday, this was also just the 4th time this season that the Cowboys have led a game at halftime. That was their first cover in their last 6 matches. The last time was when they drew with the Panthers 30-all back in round 10. Cowboys have had 5 straight games go over the total, and 8 of their last 9 have gone over the total. Melbourne, they've won 4 straight and still only trailed at halftime in 1 game all season long. With that and the Cowboys struggling in the first half, expect Melbourne to have the lead at halftime. Melbourne have scored 25 plus points in 6 straight games, and the Cowboys have conceded at least 24 points in 8 straight games. Definitely expect Melbourne to score at least those 24 points, which should be enough to beat the Cowboys. They'll probably score more. Don't think they'll really need to, though. Last week against the Titans, the Cowboys scored 30 points, but prior to that, they'd only scored a total of 26 points in 3 games against the Roosters, Dolphins, and the game against the Storm just back in round 14. So even though this time around they're meeting at the Cowboys' home ground, I don't think it's going to be enough. You obviously have to be wary of that record that they have up there, the Cowboys at home. But with the current form these teams are in, Storm really pushing for that top 2 spot. If we look at the ladder here, we'll see Storm currently sit in 3rd. They're 1 win behind the Bulldogs and Raiders in 1st and 2nd position, and then they're 1 game clear of the Warriors in 4th. So Storm need to keep on winning games and making sure they can get that top 2, which gives them the home qualifying final, which I think will be important. You obviously don't want to be traveling up to Sydney to play the Bulldogs or traveling out to Canberra to play the Raiders in a qualifying final when you could have a home game. By the end of the year, expect the Storm to probably move into 2nd spot, most likely. But we'll see how we go. But with where they're currently sitting on the ladder, they can't afford to drop it. Cowboys sitting half a game outside the top 8, but I really don't think they're much of a chance, particularly when you look at their run home. This game against the Storm, they play the Bulldogs, Dolphins following this. They've got the Sharks, Broncos as well. There's a few games that are winnable through that period, but with the way their current form is going, I don't think it's enough. I think if the Storm are on here, they can win this game by plenty. We've seen teams comfortably beat the Cowboys in recent times. They lost to the Roosters by 34, the Dolphins by 54, and the Storm by 24 in the 3 games leading up to the game against the Titans, who, in fairness, are last on the ladder. So you don't want to look at the Cowboys and just be like, oh, they did win last week. They scored 30 points. They're versing the team on the bottom of the ladder and the team that concedes the 2nd most points in the competition. So this should be a comfortable win for the Storm, all things being equal. The total is 48.5 for the game here. I make a fair total of 51.5, so I think it is slightly low, but you have to factor in the outs for the Cowboys. I'd prefer to play the Storm team total to go over. The betting option in this game is just I have question marks on the Cowboys scoring, and the Storm kept the Sharks to 6 points last week. In a good defensive performance, and they've kept teams to 16 or less in 4 of their past 6 games overall. And if the Cowboys are only scoring 16 points, then you're going to need the Storm to score 34 in order to get the over. So I prefer to play the Storm team total in this situation. Then we have the Roosters versus West Tigers. The Roosters, pretty big favourites here, $1.25, minus 12.5, and the total is 48.5. The Roosters have won and covered the past 8 versus the Tigers. The past 7 of those have all been when they are favourite. Roosters have won 5 of the past 6 versus the Tigers by at least 22 points. So these games haven't really been close. When you look through last year, round 17, 40-6, 2023, 32-8, 2022, round 23, Roosters 72-6, 2021 at Campbelltown, Tigers home game, the Roosters won 40-6 in the last 4 meetings. The Roosters have scored 32 or more in each of the past 5 versus the Tigers, and the Tigers have been kept to 6 or less in the past 4 versus the Roosters. Last time they met, if you just look at that game where it was a 40-6 scoreline, Roosters dominated. They scored 8 tries to 1. The Tigers' only try came in the 79th minute when they were trailing 40-0. Roosters led 20-0 at halftime. Dom Young, who's now with the Knights, and Daniel Tupou both got doubles on the wings. Tigers had 2 sin bins in the second half. Roosters scored 3 off their 4 second half tries, whilst the Tigers were down a player, and all 3 of those tries came when Adam Dewey was sin binned. Roosters had 51% possession. They completed at 83%. The Tigers completed at 77%, so not that much lower. But the big difference is the Roosters plus 450 run meters and 10-2 line breaks. Tigers missed 48 tackles as well, and errors and penalties were pretty much even in this game. I think Roosters are going to be really hard to beat here. I don't think they're going to win by 30, 40 points like they have been beating the Tigers in recent times, but I think it is a comfortable 2 to 3 try winning game for them. But they are hit a little bit harder than the Tigers by origin, missing Angus Crichton, Connor Watson, Lindsay Collins, Robin Toya, and Spencer Lenu. Tigers are obviously without Jerome Luai, and we saw how bad they were in the game last week without him, particularly in attack. They don't really have a lot of direction. I think they're going to struggle to score enough points to really make this a competitive game. For them to beat the Roosters, it's going to really rely on their defense, which hasn't really, it's been okay, but it hasn't really been that great lately. They've conceded 16 plus points in each of their last 9 games straight, with a few 28s, 32s in there. But for them to have a chance here, it's going to have to be similar to the game against Canberra, where it was a real low-scoring grind, 16-12 scoreline, similar to the game prior to that against the Panthers. They can't afford, they played good for the first half against the Seagulls last week, but then fell away. Tigers have lost 6 straight games and not led at halftime in any. They were tied with the Panthers in that game, but outside of that, trailed in each of the other 5. They've covered the spread in 3 of their past 4, and their last 3 have gone under. So that sets up for the game that they want to play. I just don't know if the Roosters, who are off the bye and 14 days rest, are going to let them be able to do that. I don't think they'll want that kind of game. They'll want a more attacking, free-flowing game. They've won their last 2 against the Cowboys and Knights. Roosters have covered 5 of their last 7 overall. They've only trailed at halftime once in their last 7 games, which was against the Knights. In that game played in the rain that they came back to win. 6 of their last 8 have gone over the total. So in terms of totals, these teams are trending opposite directions. With the current total at 48.5, I'd slightly lean towards the under. I think it's 1, 2, maybe even 3 points too high just based off the lineups that these teams have. I just don't think there's a great deal of points in the Tigers, and the Roosters only conceded 8 against the Cowboys in their last game prior to the bye and 8 in the game against the Knights prior to that. So 16 total in their last 2 games. And right now, Tigers have slipped to 14th ranking in points for at just 19.3 a game, which I think is nowhere near enough here to beat the Roosters, whose defensive numbers keep on improving. And there's also no Api Coruscant for the Tigers this week either, which I just think they have too many issues in terms of their attacking abilities. Sania Taruva goes to fullback, with Buller still out of the team as well. I can't see enough points in this Tiger side for them to win, so I like the Roosters to win comfortably. I think this round does kind of set up as a game for favourites. The last game of the round is the one that really depends on which team turns up here. It is the Seagulls against the Rabbitohs. The Seagulls are $1.36 favourites, minus 9.5, and the total is 47.5. Now, obviously, Latrell Mitchell is out, which is a big loss for the Rabbitohs, and definitely can understand why the Seagulls are favourites this game. The question is, can you take $1.36 or lay 9.5 points for a Manly side that has been super inconsistent? They broke a 2-game losing streak off the bye, beating the Tigers 28-10. But overall, it's been an inconsistent past couple of months for them. They've had good performances and bad performances, and it's been on a week-to-week basis. You never really know which team that you're going to get. There's obviously the bad loss against the Titans after the Golden Point loss against the Knights prior to that, but then they beat the Broncos, who are undefeated since Manly beat them. So their recent form has been a little bit sketchy. 9 of their last 10 games have gone under the total, so they're relying on low-scoring games, which Rabbitohs have started going in the opposite direction. Earlier on this season, the Rabbitohs from round 1 through to round 11, every single game went under the total. Since they had the bye in round 12, 4 of the 5 games went over the total, and the game when they went under still had 42 points in it, and they just went under. against the Bulldogs. So right now these teams are trending opposite directions. I don't fully know which way I want to go in this game. Rabbitohs are the ones that have the good record. They've won 8 of the past 9 versus Manly, and they've won 6 of the past 7 by at least 12 points. They've also won 3 of their past 4 at 4 Pines Park. So even though this is a Manly home game and a back-to-back home game for them, the Rabbitohs have proven to have a good record there. I just don't know if they're playing well enough to be able to win this game. But in fairness, they've had a really tough run lately. Last week, losing to the Dolphins. Prior to that, they played the Storm, Bulldogs, Raiders, and Warriors. They're all top 4 teams on the ladder. And Dolphins are up there with the most informed team in the competition, particularly in terms of attack, scoring 50 points for the... How many times does that make it now? 50 points for the 3rd time in their last 4 games. They've scored 44 or more in 4 of their last 5 games. The only exception was against the Knights, who are the number 2 defensive side in the competition. But right now, let's just look at last time they met, where the Rabbitohs won 14-0. That was round 16. Last season, it was a Rabbitohs home game. They scored 2 tries in the first half, but missed both conversions. So then they led 8-0 at halftime, and then scored their 3rd and the only other try of the game in the 78th minute. Rabbitohs had 53% possession. They completed at 82%. Manly only completed at 71%. Both teams, 2,000 run meters, 700 post contact. Rabbitohs had 4-1 line breaks. Manly missed 31 tackles. Rabbitohs only missed 22. Manly had 15 to 13 errors, pretty high error game, and the Rabbitohs won the penalty count 10-3. Set restarts were 3-all. How much that penalty count made a difference potentially in what was a low-scoring game? Manly might have shot themselves in the foot quite a bit. My early thoughts for this game, like obviously it's only early on Tuesday, is that this could be a close game, but there's not a great deal of information that fully backs that up. When we look at the stats, Manly are significantly the better attack end, but I am wary of the amount of tough games the Rabbitohs have played in this streak, where they've lost 5 straight and lost 9 of their last 11. The issue with the Rabbitohs is 4 of their last 5 games have gone over because they've conceded 24 plus in each of those. And they've also conceded 24 plus in all losses this season. They've only conceded 24 points in a win 1 time, which was against the Dragons back in round 2, where they won 25-24. Every other win they've had, they've basically kept the opponent to about 14 points. So that's like the threshold for Manly here. If they can get to 24 points, they'll probably win the game. If they only score 12, 14 points, then they'll probably lose the game. I think Rabbitohs still have enough points in them to keep this competitive. So I'm leaning towards this game being close. Just don't love Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. If he was playing, then I'd definitely be more confident in it being a close game. But just Manly probably 1-12. They'll win by a small margin is how I'm expecting this to play out. I think they're ultimately definitely deserving of being favourites. The stats suggest that, but Rabbitohs do have that really good record and history against them. Most likely, Manly get over the line in the last game. Just think there's not a great deal of value in their current price. So that's how I'm looking at betting round 18 of the NRL. Really appreciate you guys watching, following along on the channel all season. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any other videos through the rest of the year. Try scorers for this week will be posted very soon, so make sure you have notifications on so you don't miss that video when it's posted. We'll break down all the most likely try scorers this weekend based on the stats and how these teams have been playing over the season, where they're conceding tries, where they're scoring tries, and what's been happening in recent times. Like, the purpose of that video is I do the try scorer research for you because it's pretty in-depth and saves you a lot of time by watching that video. That's also what the bet finders are designed to do, which you can access through the link in the description, to save you time researching games and trying to look at how teams have been going, where their strengths and weaknesses are. All that information is right there at the click of the button in the NRL bet finders. Plus, you get to see everything I'm betting by the weekend as well. Definitely check it out. See you guys in the next video.